Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Gardening with Natives workshop. This is the first of a three-part series. And today we're going to be talking about gardening with natives with Master Gardener Anna Wendorf. Like I mentioned, this series is produced and created by Sustainable Contra Costa and our partners. And sponsor for this program is the Contra Costa Water District. They have a lot of water conservation resources available, including a lawn to garden rebate program that you can take part in when you're putting all these wonderful native plants in your gardens. Our instructor today is Anna Wendorf. She's a master gardener with the Contra Costa Master Gardener program, and we'll hear a little bit about her later. Our quick agenda for today is that I'm going to tell you a little bit about Sustainable Contra Costa. I'm also going to mention some of the Contra Costa Water District resources, and then we'll hear from the Master Gardener herself. And then after that, we are going to have a Q&A portion. So if you have questions that come up over the course of the program, go ahead and type them in the chat, and we will do that at the very end. The Master Gardeners have also included a survey that they would like you to take, please. We'll mention it later, but it's also the QR code that was sent to you in your confirmation emails. So Sustainable Contra Costa is a community of educators, innovators dedicated to helping people live in more sustainable ways and in ways that are kind to the planet. We are a founding member in the East Bay Clean Air Coalition, which is aimed at helping communities in the East Bay address their air issues with air pollution and just finding ways to get the community involved. Additionally, we have a Sustainable Leaders in Action team. This is a team of high school and college age students who work with us and get to guide different sustainability projects that they're interested in. And we also work on the Bay Run Home Plus program, which I will be telling you about shortly. Additionally, we offer workshops such as this one, another program called Sustainability Live, and we manage different regional events and networks. And we actually have our sustainability awards coming up later on in September. But our main project is the Cleaner Contra Costa Challenge. So these are some stats that you can see of our savings so far. With this program, it's been around for, I think, 3 years now, and we are always trying to get more people involved and wanting to help people find customized resources and actions that will help them on their sustainability journeys. This is a free online platform that offers different action categories. There are 90 different actions on the platform, over 90. All of these have sustainability tips for you. So if you put in your energy usage when you make your account, which is super quick, you're able to have customized suggested actions. As you can see, there are different categories, and within those categories are different actions. And each of those actions have their own customized resources depending on your zip code. So just making sure that you get the best resources available to you, and they're driven by where it is that you live. So as specific to you as possible. We also promote the Bay Run program. This is a Bay Area Regional Energy Network. It's a collaboration between the 9 Bay Area counties to offer energy saving programs with funding from the Public Utility Commission. Since 2013, the single family program has served over 10,000 projects and with $21 million in rebates. So there's plenty of money for rebates available. If you're interested in wanting to do any retrofit projects or just dedicated to making your home more energy efficient. Like I mentioned, our sponsor for this program is the Contra Costa Water District. They have a lot of wonderful resources, including their Facebook group, if you would like to hear about maintaining a water-wise landscape, gardening in Contra Costa, 7 Steps to a New Landscape, and as I mentioned before, the Lawn to Garden website. They offer rebates for you to get rid of your lawn and replace it with a garden, which is excellent as we are preparing to hear from Anna. So I would just like to welcome Anna Wendorf. She is a landscape designer and plant enthusiast. She's been designing gardens since earning her degree in landscape architecture from UC Berkeley over 40 years ago. She's currently focusing her work on designing sustainable gardens throughout the Bay Area. And she became a master gardener in 2020 and has been working on pollinator gardens, volunteer training, and plant ID classes. She spends her evenings perusing plant and biology books and playing in her garden. So if everyone would like to give a warm welcome to Anna, the floor is yours.
There we go. Okay, hi everybody. I'm going to share my screen now and we can get started. Okay, can you see my screen now? Okay, you're muted too, Ellie.
Yes.
Okay, I'm hoping that I'll be able to inspire you to put in some natives, or maybe replace a lot of the plants in your yard that are sort of more conventional with some native plants. And I'll tell you why and give you some tips on how to do it, because it's a little bit different from a conventional garden. And once you understand how to do it, then you'll have the power to be able to make the changes yourself. And then we'll have some more resources in the handouts as well to help you make some decisions about which plants to put in and how. So let's get started on this. Okay. Here's sort of an overview of what we're going to be covering in the next 25-30 minutes. This, by the way, I'm going to have little vignettes of plants on the sides, and I'll describe them as we go through the project. This is a brown twig dogwood, which actually does very well in a pot, and brings a little bit of wild into your patio. It's kind of pretty little plant. This is in my front yard. This is a Ceanothus valley violet. You can see that planting natives is not going to give you a dry, twiggy, cactusy garden. It's going to be really pretty. Okay, so first of all, before we start talking about why to plant native plants, we should talk about what kind of yards we're currently maintaining right now, and why do we do this? Over the last 100 years or so, people have decided that having a lawn with a few shrubs around the edges, maybe some flowers, is something of a status symbol. It's a way of keeping the yard neat so that people understand that you have you're caring for the space, and it makes you fit into the landscape. The plants that we plant there are static. They don't necessarily change a lot through the seasons, and people are just kind of tired, and they don't necessarily want to put a lot of effort into the garden. So if it's just there, it's plastic, it's done, then they don't really think about it. And the gardeners are coming in now with these power tools, and they're shearing everything into these odd little shapes, which is not attractive when you really think about comparing this to a native garden. You're already looking at a lot of dead twigs in most gardens. The other reason that we plant conventional gardens is that the nurseries have been producing these plants that look cute in the nursery. They have little flowers. They look really pretty when they're really compact and small. They're adapted to growing in containers, little tiny containers. So when people take them home, they're not necessarily adapted to gardens. They're adapted to the nurseries and the growers. So just some things to keep in mind when you are resisting those little petunias out in the garden, in the garden centers. Why would we plant native gardens? Sustainability, and we'll talk a little bit more about that, why it's so important to be a steward of your land, to be a part of the world, and really feel responsible for some of the wildlife in our area. The native plants are easy to grow, especially the ones that are locally adapted. They're interesting. You get to watch birds. You get to watch how some of the pollinators come through the garden. It makes things much more interesting. And then there is the biodiversity, which involves more than just the pollinators and the birds and the other animals. In the soil, there's biodiversity. All of these plants, these animals, these insects, everything has evolved together over the last thousands and thousands of years. And when you put them back together, they create a soil and above ground web that is really fascinating to watch. Okay, so we'll talk a little bit about sustainability. If you're here, you probably already are inspired to offer a sustainable yard for pollinators, for birds. We'll talk a little bit more about that, and for building the soils. Native plants are easy to grow. They require less water than a conventional yard. You don't have to mow them. There's very little pruning involved, and you don't need to fertilize them. You don't need to use any chemicals to kill the bugs that are on them because they are adapted to this space. You don't need to really do a lot of interference on them, just a little bit to keep them neat. And just so you know, this is an Endromican island poppy. This is a redbud, and this is a penstemon, Margarita bop, and this is a monkey flower, and then that's probably verbena in the back, and then this is a buckwheat. I'll show you some more of those later. This little plant here is a beautiful new introduction of California fuchsia. It's a pink variety. There's some beautiful pinks and corals that are coming into the market right now. They all have a different shape and they're just really super easy to grow. So growing native plants, it's lots of fun for kids and for adults to learn about wildlife and to learn about how the plants interact with each other, to be more connected to the seasonal changes that happen in our area right here. For example, the buckwheats, they start off in the spring with a little mat of, not all of them, but some of them, a little mat of greenery, and then they come out and they grow larger and larger, and then they have the massive flowers on them that goes through the summer, and then the flowers turn rusty and the birds come and eat the seeds, and then you can cut that back again in the fall. So you're connected to the seasons. The birds will come in, hummingbirds, all kinds of interesting migratory birds, local birds. It's just lots of fun to watch. As we said, the plants that the native plants all evolved over a great millennia of time, and planting them together is really helping the habitat of our spaces. And the soil building, this is the second time I've mentioned it without talking about it. When we are tilling the soil, adding amendments that have been brought from all over the world, and adding fertilizers, what we're doing is we're breaking down the natural soil structure. We're changing the chemistry of it, all to try to get these other little hydrangeas and roses and Raphaelopus to grow. Not necessarily the healthiest thing for the soil microbes that are in our soil right now. And this is a California aster, which is a great pollinator plant and super easy to grow. This is a really important point. If any of you haven't seen Douglas Tallamy's talks on YouTube, he's definitely worth watching. Really beautiful videos. He has done a great deal of research on habitat, and especially on insects. He has discovered that it takes 5,000 to 9,000 caterpillars to raise a clutch of chickadees. And you can imagine how many nests you would like to have on your property. Each one of those nests has to have that many caterpillars. They cannot feed their babies seeds, except for a couple of little oddballs, but most of them require caterpillars because they have the proper nutrients for them. They're soft. They're really rich in fats and vitamins. So it's extremely important for the caterpillars to for the birds to have caterpillars to feed their babies. If we don't have those, there are no baby birds. Now the thing about the caterpillars is they just won't grow on any plant. A lot of the plants that have been brought in from around the world that are standard in our suburban yards will not feed the caterpillars. And that has been one of the reasons that people have planted it, because they don't have any bugs. People don't like bugs in their yard. But we really do have to feed the caterpillars, and we have to, and that way we're feeding the birds. So that's another really important reason to plant native plants. And pollinators. So when you think about pollinators, you often think about just the bees that we see. There are all kinds of little tiny pollinators that are native to our area that you don't necessarily notice, and they're going to need some native plants. They're very specific about which kinds of plants they're going to feed on. And then of course butterflies, nectar for the adults, and then every butterfly has their own specific host plant that they will not they will only produce, the caterpillars will only eat that particular type of plant. There's the pipevine swallowtail only will eat the pipevine. There's of course the monarchs eating the milkweed. They're all very specific. So if you want to support them through their whole life cycle, then you need to plant those specific native plants. And then the hummingbirds, they're not as picky, but they sure do love something with a really yummy nectar in it. And this plant here is that is another California fuchsia. This is a really beautiful one. And the hummingbirds just go nuts over it. This is a close-up of a buckwheat flower. And we'll talk a little bit more about buckwheats in a minute. So selecting plants. There's really two parts to selecting plants. Just figuring out what the site will require, what kind of conditions do you have in your site, and then what do you want it to look like. So really it's just those two things and finding that balance. And I'll show you a little bit about how I go about designing that so that it works both ways. You're supporting the pollinators and you're supporting yourself. You're giving yourself something fun to look at, and you're bringing in plants that are going to survive on the soil and light and everything that you have on your yard. Okay, these are the main components in analyzing the site. It's not really as complicated as it looks. The main thing is to dig a hole in a couple of parts of the yard, fill it up with water, find out what the drainage is. Most California plants really don't like to sit in water. So that is going to be your number one concern, making sure that you have really good drainage. Your soil could be clay, it could be sandy, could be anywhere in between. It's just important to get a feel for what the soil is. And then we can talk a little bit about how you plug that in. It's not that complicated, but just getting that information is really important. Understanding the sun and shade patterns, especially reflected heat, is really important to take a note of. Light shade, which is the easiest one to work with. If you have a little bit of a like shade in the afternoon or filtered shade through a very light tree, you're going to have a wide range of plants that you can grow. And then really deep shade, which is a little bit trickier, but I'll give you some resources so that you can find a few things that'll grow in sort of a denser shade. The water on the site is important to note if you're going to be tucking some natives into an already existing landscape. You want to check what the irrigation system is, what the water needs of the next door plants are. If you're going to be putting something near a lawn or near some other shrubbery, then you need to know how much water is going to be drifting through the site there. And then I put critters here because so many of our yards are browsed by deer and are affected by ground squirrels. So it's just important to take a note of that. There are plants that are more resistant to critters eating them. And it's a good idea to know what you're dealing with from the beginning. And just so you know, this is a blue-eyed grass, super easy to grow. It grows wild in the hills around here. Very satisfying. This is the longer variety. There are some shorter hybrids that are just adorable too, that look really great in a garden. This is a checker mallow, also super easy to grow. This one's in my backyard. It's kind of a sprawling plant, really delicate little flower in the spring. Lots of fun. Okay, so here, this is how I set up when I'm designing a yard. I set up what I need put into the yard so that I have something that's going to be a ground cover and something that's going to be a tree, and I know what I'm going to be working with. It's a little bit easier to see on the next slide. I'll show you that. This is a coyote bush. This is a dwarf variety that actually was developed from one near the sea. So it's a little bit shorter. A lot of the plants that are coastal are a little bit shorter, and much of the plant material in the trade is from the coast because they tend to look a little bit neater. And then back behind, that's a regular ceanothus, probably Yankee Point, and then a hybrid ceanothus here with the bright yellow. Okay, where did I put that? There it is. This is what I wanted to show you. This is how I organize a plant palette before I develop a plan. I make a list of all of the plants that are going to do well under the conditions of that particular yard. So if it has a clay soil, then I make a list of only plants that are going to do well in the soil. And if it's fast draining or on a hillside, then I make a separate list of just the ones that are going to take that. Then I have something to work with. And then when I go back in to do a design or pick out specific plants that I want to use, then I know that everything is going to survive and it's going to look great. And this is the kind of list that I'll be sending out as part of the handouts. So you'll have some fun things to work with, and it'll be a great shortcut for you. Here are a couple of screening plants. These are the plants that I would put into the screening category. This is a toyon, which is so easy to grow that the birds are planting it all in people's yards. It pops up in hedges. It pops up all over the place. It takes sun. It takes shade. It has beautiful red berries in the winter. You can prune it, which isn't true of all natives, and we'll talk about that in a minute. So you can keep it super neat. It blends into native yards. It's very adaptable as far as water concerns. You could give it no water. You could give it a moderate amount of water, and it will still look great. This is a Pacific wax myrtle, very popular plant right now because of its beautiful lush green leaves. There's a couple of care concerns about it, but once you get that established, you're fine. It just needs to be planted carefully as far as the roots. I've been having a little bit of troubles with them. Just you need to rinse off the roots before you plant them, but we can talk about that's actually in the handout also. And it does need a little bit of pruning to keep it neat, but once you do, it is as lush as an oleander, just as and really tough. Here are a couple of flowering shrubs. This is a on the left is a sugar bush. This is a great shrub to work with. Not planted nearly enough in our area. It grows quickly. It's really dense, and this plant can be trimmed as neatly as most of the conventional plants that are coming from China. So it's a great plant to work with. You can also trim it up into a small tree. You can make it do whatever you want it to do. And you can take the flowers and the berries and you can make lemonade out of it. That's what the Native Americans used to do. And it's apparently delicious. I haven't tried it yet. This is a flowering currant. They will take sun but not reflected heat. They're light and airy looking. When the sun shines through the leaves, they light up like stained glass windows, really beautiful lime green. And then the leaves can get really big if they're grown in the shade. It's really lush feeling. And then, of course, in the spring, they have these gorgeous flowers that come in all different colors of pink. There are lots more beautiful shrubs too, but these are just a couple to give you an idea. So infill is an important component of the landscape that we don't talk about a lot. When you plant out the shrubs, you want to make sure that they are spaced properly. You have to give them plenty of room. And so you're left with a lot of bare ground. What I do is I plant some little perennials, some annuals that will fill in and cover that ground, make it look like a landscape while the other plants are filling in. So let's say you have your sunset manzanita is planted at say 6 feet apart, which would be nice to give them a lot of room to grow. As nursery plants, they're going to be little tiny 1 gallons, and you're going to have 6 feet of space in between. What do you do with that? You can just have mulch there if you're patient, or you can seed it with some native wildflower seeds. You can also plant something like these hummingbird sage, which will spread out low and make a mat. And then I'll show you some buckwheats that can be filled in there. There's a lot of things that you can use to give a temporary cover for the space. Okay, and then we'll talk a little bit about how you're going to plant them and how you're going to take care of them. This is really important because most people are familiar with mowing a lawn. You mow the lawn once a week, you water the heck out of it, and you fertilize it and you're good to go. And so people understand that parameter of how to take care of a yard. They also know that you have little plants that you shape with some kind of a pruner, and then you're done. The California natives require a different set of installation and maintenance procedures. And so just learning these gives you the power to be able to put in a garden that is going to survive and thrive. And this is it's not complicated, but it is different from our conventional gardens. So it's helpful to understand this. This is a garden in Walnut Creek. This is Dara's Choice Sage, which is an excellent, easy native plant to get started with. This is a sunset manzanita, which is just starting to fill in. It's going to get real dense, and then it has these beautiful coppery leaves in early spring. So we'll talk about the process, but in the meantime, I want to tell you about this hummingbird sage. Be careful if you do buy hummingbird sage, that you get one of the named varieties. This one is Mattol Select. You want to get one that is going to stay compact. Some of the older varieties, some of the straight natives will spread through your yard. You don't want to do that. You want to get one of the named hybrids. They will stay a certain size. Some of them are taller, some are shorter. You can look it up. Just don't get the straight native hummingbird, the California fuchsia. You'll regret it years later. Okay, so this is really important. When you're planting a plant that you just pick up from Home Depot because it looks like cute, you can plant it just about any way you want, and it may or may not survive, but it's most likely it's not going to be very picky. Native plants need to have drainage. That's the number one concern with, that's the number one thing that kills off native plants, is when you don't have good drainage and they're inappropriately watered. So what you want to do is dig a hole that's twice as wide as the root ball, loosen up this soil, and then you want to plant the plant so that it is actually higher than the surrounding soil. I like to plant it 1 inch to 2 inches higher so that it's almost up like on a little bit of a mound. And that is going to protect the crown of the plant. Very important to keep it elevated just a little bit. And then when you put the dirt back in, you don't amend it. And that's different from the plants that came from Asia or some of the other parts of the world where you have to actually mix in soil amendment. You don't do that. No fertilizer tablets, no nothing. You just put the same dirt back in. It's a little loosened so the roots have a way to get out. For most of the native plants, you're going to loosen up the soil just a little bit around the edges of the root balls so that the roots are encouraged to go out into the native soil. You might want to build a little bit of a basin on the edge here where it's raised to hold in the dirt for the first year, hold in the water for the first year. But then after that, you'll want to knock it down and just make it into a little bit of a mound. And you can see how the mulch does not touch the crown, but it does cover a little bit of the edge of the root ball here. So this is an ideal planting situation. What you'll want to do when you're planting it out is fill up the hole with water completely and let it drain out. You want to saturate the surrounding soil with water. And then after you plant it, you water it in really well. That's the last time you're going to be doing that. You want it to settle in. You want all of the surrounding soils to be very saturated with water right at the beginning. And we'll talk a little bit about watering in just a minute too. That's another really important component. This shows why we want to plant native plants as far as the water needs matching what the precipitation is in our area. In California, this is a typical precipitation chart. We get water in the winter and we get nothing in the summer. Traditional plants that come from Asia and other parts of the world require more water in the summer and a little bit less in the winter, which is exactly the opposite of the precipitation that we get. But the plants that grow naturally in California, the ones that are adapted to this, their water needs match what the precipitation rate is because that's what they're adapted to. So it does make sense to plant things that are adapted to the climate that we do have. I know these are strawberries. We have to ignore that. But the watering is the main reason that native plants don't make it. So this is the main thing to pay attention to. It's the watering and the drainage that's really going to make a difference in whether your plants are successful or not. So at planting, we talked about flooding the ground, getting everything really super wet. The first year, you just got to fuss a little bit. You've got to check on the root ball. You can use a water meter or you can use your finger, just check it, make sure that it's not drying out to bone dry. You want to water it probably every week, right on the root ball. You want to make sure that the root ball isn't drying out to powdery dry. That's in the summer. And then in the winter, if we have a low precipitation winter, you might want to give them a little bit of extra water in the winter when the soil is cool. This is what they're adapted to. If we have a drought year, they're adapted to more water in the winter, so that's a good time to give them some extra water to charge the system. 3 types of irrigation systems if you have an automatic system. Inline drip is what is recommended. That's what this is here with these strawberry plants. It has little emitters every 12 inches or 6 inches along the line. And this gives you something close to what natural rainfall would be, where the ground is all evenly dampened at the same time. It's the healthiest place for the roots to grow. So that's the most highly recommended way of putting in an irrigation system. Point source drip is where you have the little spaghetti tubing with a little emitter on the end, and it's only going to be dripping in one spot. It has been very popular in the past, but it's not as recommended now because the water does not spread laterally enough to really give you a good root ball. So it's not as healthy for the plants. And then hand watering. If you're going to be establishing something that will not take very much water, sometimes that's really the best way to do it if you don't have a very large yard. So to hand water them and check them frequently, especially through the summer, to make sure that the root balls don't dry out all the way. So just just fuss over them. And pruning, there's we'll just skip through this really quickly, but pruning is important for keeping things to look neat so that they look somewhat conventional, especially for a front yard. Most of the plants you can head back a little bit to keep them a little bit dense. You don't want to go in with an electric edge shear, but you can go in with clippers and keep them a little bit denser. Some of the plants that have a sculptural shape, you want to open them up and really show off how beautiful they are, like little tiny trees. And then a lot of the perennials, you want to cut them back heavily once a year, usually in late fall, like the buckwheats and some of the asters. You'll see when they die down to the ground, and then there's a little crown of green, you know that you can cut it all the way back. And then coppicing, which is a specialized way of treating some of the plants. It is possible to do that to keep them yard shaped, and we're not going to really go into that right now. Okay, so this is a Doris Choice sage. Beautiful green leaves, super easy to grow. I'm just going to run through a few plants to show you some of the ones that are the easiest to grow in your yard. There's two varieties of ceanothus. This one is super easy, and you can cut it back really hard and it comes back really nicely. Most ceanothus need really good drainage. So if they're not doing well, it's usually because their feet are sitting in heavy clay or that they're being overwatered. Manzanitas, they're a little bit more picky to get established, but once you do, they're just tough as nails. The low growing varieties that you use as a ground cover need a little bit of shade and a little sprinkling of water in the winter, in summer. And then there's some beautiful upright ones that have some gorgeous red bark. Those will all be on your lists that you'll get later. Sages, there's so many varieties and they're all completely different. The hummingbird sage is sort of minty scented, makes great tea, and the hummingbirds go crazy over it. It grows about a foot tall. The white sage, which is the one that's used for smudging a house to get rid of ghosts, it's very fragrant and very striking. And then there are a lot of these bushy ones that have a strong scent, a little bit wilder, but they have some gorgeous flowers, and all of the pollinators just go crazy for this. And buckwheats, you could do a whole yard of buckwheats and nobody would notice that there was only one kind of plant in there. There's taller ones and shorter ones, and you can mix them up, and you could just mix them all up and they would still look great. They're wonderful plants, really good. Okay, here are my references, and then I'll be sending these out so that you'll have some websites to check on. Lots of great information out there and ways to sort out plant lists and all kinds of fun stuff. So you'll have lots of information and you'll be ready to put in whatever natives you need for your garden. Okay, and I'm going to tell you about these. These are lupins that I found in Black Diamond. These are just growing wild. Look how beautiful those are. And they smell like grape soda. And beautiful little garden here with all native plants. So that is, I am ready to take some questions.
All right, everyone. Thank you so much, Anna. Your presentation was beautiful. All right, everyone, if you have any questions, please submit them in the chat. I will go ahead and field those questions to Anna, and you're encouraged to ask as many questions as you would like, or general feedback as well. Oh, sorry, and you can also ask it out loud. Sorry, everyone, I'm used to running webinars. All right, do we have any questions? Where's a good place? Thank you, Stacy. Stacy wants to know, where's a good place to buy these plants?
So most of the plants are going to be available on the west side of the county, over in Richmond, Oakland, a lot of native plant nurseries there, and even over on the peninsula. So just Google native plants, California native plants. You can take a list to a local nursery and ask them if they can order them in or if they have them. And it would be nice to give them a little bit of pressure so that they would carry more native plants. But in general, you're going to find them over on the west side of the hills. That's where all the native plant nurseries are. They're wonderful, wonderful nurseries. They're very knowledgeable people. They're really fun. Yeah.
Adding on to that, Jonathan Lee added a link to the Watershed Nursery in Point Richmond. And we have some kudos in the chat for your informative and beautiful slides. And we have another question from Stephanie. So lots of native plant folks are now recommending overhead rotator irrigation. Can you speak to that?
It really depends on the plants. So there are some plants that will tolerate that just fine, some that love it, and then others that won't tolerate it at all. So it really depends on which plants you have. Some of the short manzanitas like to have a little bit of a light sprinkling, and some of the others won't put up with it. So I'm sorry, you're gonna have to do some research on that. If you're using them in the winter, that's not going to be any problem at all. The problem is that there are some pathogens that will affect the plants. If the soil is hot and you add water to it, it can activate those fungal infections and so forth. So you have to be careful. So definitely do the research and check. I'm sorry, it's a little bit more complicated than just yes or no.
Thank you. We have a question from Stephanie M. Go ahead.
Hi, good morning. Great information. Thank you. Two questions. One is, how do we go about finding a designer that can help us with selecting and designing what would work well for our yard? And two is, do a lot of the designers also, would they be able to help with what fruits and vegetables would pair well with these native plants so that we could, kind of have a garden where we can grow some things to eat as well?
Really great questions. So there are resources for finding a designer. That Bring Me Back the Natives tour has a list of designers that will work with natives, and that's a good place to start. And if you contact Kathy Kramer, she'll give you other resources. And some of the nurseries will give you names of people that work with them, or names that they'll hand out. So if you go to a native plant nursery, they should be able to help you with that too. You could also go to the Association of Professional Landscape Designers, and kind of check the websites of the designers that are listed there. They're going to be more educated than some of the other designers in this, in general. That's going to be a good resource also. Yeah. And then the other question, I'm sorry, I've forgotten.
It was fruits and vegetables.
Oh yeah, fruits and vegetables. Most fruits and vegetables are going to take a great deal more water than a native plant. So you want to have those in a separate section on a separate irrigation system. There are a couple of trees that will be fine with less water. It's a persimmon and a pomegranate. Those two will take less water, possibly a fig. But most of them, you're just going to keep them in a kind of a separate area, or at least on a separate system.
Awesome, thank you. We have some more kudos in the chat. Wonderful presentation. And then Jeffrey says, I have a pretty dead yard from simply not watering for a couple years, and also simple inexperience prior to that. Is there anything I should do to keep in mind, or is there anything I should keep in mind when restoring a dead yard with natives?
The main thing is to check the drainage, find out where the water is flowing, and you can make little mounds. You can dig up some of the yard and make some raised areas. That's going to really give you a lot more versatility in the plant material that you can choose. You could, at this point, put down a thick layer of mulch over most of the yard. That's going to help cool the soil and get the activity in the soil started. If you need to, you can even do some sheet mulching if you have a lot of weeds. But getting some bark mulch on there is really going to help to get the soil restored.
Also, Contra Costa Water District has some really good resources about losing like your yard or your grass. So they also have information about sheet mulching and mulching if that's what you'd like to do as well.
Excellent.
Okay, we have another question from Janine. So how do we find a landscape company that knows how to work with native plants and rainwater gardens that are willing to work with a residential customer's budget? Janine says that she can't find anyone who will take on a re-landscaping job with a smaller budget and has found that people only want jobs in the 50,000 range.
I'm so sorry. It's hard to get a contractor right now because everybody's been staying home and so they've been in high demand. I would contact the nurseries, find out if they have some references for you, and I wish I could help you out more about that. I don't really have any great resources. I'm sorry.
Thank you. We have a bit of a lull in the chat, so if anyone wants to raise their virtual hand to ask a question out loud, or if anyone else wants to add some questions to the chat, we'll give it a minute or so. All right.
Okay.
Oh, yep. Okay. Yes, go ahead. Gonzalez.
Okay, I live in Canada. Wondering if all these plants are be able to grow here. You know, during the summertime it's very hot and dry. Wintertime, you know, we get a lot of snow. And actually in my yard is very rocky. Is the soil is very hard. Every time I dig, we have a lot of rocks. Wondering if with this kind of soil and the place where I live, those native plants can grow well.
So you're talking about a yard in Canada?
Yes.
Okay.
And
yeah.
It's in Ontario, close to Ottawa.
Okay. Yeah. So you can research some of the California native plants that would do well in, say, gravel. Go to CalScape and enter the parameters and see if there are any of the California native plants that will do well. But you're going to want to probably do some research on the plants that are local to your area and find out what will do well in gravel soil there. I'm not familiar with the resources in Canada.
Okay, because I saw several plants that you're saying, like the salvia. I have some of these, but I'm seeing a lot of more beautiful plants. So I would like maybe, you know, just I was wondering maybe, you know, if I can grow them also here.
It's going to be more a matter of how much cold they will be able to take. So okay, so this is going to be a great resource for everybody. If you look up CalScape, which is produced by the California Native Plant Society, they have a lot of resources there on how much, what temperature range, the pollinators, what kind of soils and so forth. It's a great way to help you select.
Yeah, because we are zone 3 here. And some plants, you know, because it's divided by zone, so we have zone 3 to 6 or something like that to be able to grow So,
Yeah.
okay.
You're going to have to look at the local stuff, and then if you want to grow California natives, do look at the Calscape website and put in all of your parameters and see what they can offer for you, and they'll tell you exactly what you can grow.
Okay, sounds great. Thank you.
In the coming week
Yes.
or a few weeks, Anna will also send over some resources from what she's talked about. So if you are interested in like some of the plants that you saw, you can also go to a local nursery and ask, you know,
Mhm.
which of those might be viable for your
Yeah.
yard.
Yeah. It's hard for the local nurseries to carry most of the natives because they often don't look really cute when they're in the containers, and so they don't sell as well. So that's why there are specialty nurseries that will carry just native plants, and you're going to find some things that don't look really that beautiful when they're in the can, but they're going to do very well long term. So we just need to keep putting on the pressure on the local nurseries and see what they see if we can force them to carry more native plants.
All right, everyone. Are there any final questions? Oh, okay. Wendy wants to know, please recommend native plant garden design books and books for do-it-yourself.
There you go. Yeah, can you see that? Yeah.
We can't see it. It's blending into
Yeah,
the background a
I
little
know. I'll put it in the I'll put it in the chat. Okay. This is my favorite book. There are many, but this one. I'm just going to put the first author so that you can find it. You can research this. It's a very popular book and it is awesome. Okay, so I didn't type in the full title or the full authors.
Awesome. So the book is California Native Plants. First author is Carol Bornstein.
Yeah, it's also by David Frost and Bart O'Brien. Excellent book, beautiful pictures and good detailed information.
And we have some additional information in the chat from Hedwig. So
Oh yeah,
Hedwig recommends visiting local botanical and native demonstration gardens, and they'll also help with your design and planning phase as well.
yay Hedwig, thank you.
Awesome. Any final questions, everyone? I think I saw someone moving to ask a question, but they froze. All right. So thank you everyone for joining us today. If you would like to connect with Sustainable Contra Costa or support our work, you can go to sustainablecocoa.org/support. We have a YouTube channel and a Facebook group and an Instagram. If you have any questions that you would like to email us, you can email us at info@sustainablecocoa.org. Additionally, in the coming weeks, you will receive a follow-up email that will include Anna's resources that she would like to share with you all. And if you would like to sign up for the Cleaner Contra Costa Challenge, you can at cleanercontracosta.org. And it's a great way for you to track your carbon footprint, your household's carbon footprint, and the reduction of your carbon footprint as well, which is amazing. Ellie Schmidt, did you have a question? I think she froze again. Okay, that's okay. All right, and finally, we have a something that the Master Gardeners wanted us to share with you. So please go ahead and scan this QR code with your phone. And this is just a survey for the Master Gardeners. They will need you to sign in so that they can see exactly who's tuning in to these workshops. And furthermore, like I mentioned previously, this is the first of 3 workshops of ours. So please go ahead and register for the other ones if you'd like. They will be with other master gardeners. The next 2 dates in the series are October 7th. And that workshop will be an irrigation checkup and maintenance. And then on November 4th, we'll have the beneficial beauty of rain gardens. All details can be found at sustainablecocoa.org. Another thing about Sustainable Contra Costa is that all of our programs are designed to provide you with useful and timely information about all aspects of living sustainably, guided by the 10 One Planet Living principles, and provide an online community for sharing information and learning together. So this has been part of our community education and outreach efforts. And again, thank you to Contra Costa Water District for sponsoring this event and the Master Gardeners. And if we could all give like a virtual round of applause for Master Gardener Anna Wendorf. Thank you for your amazing presentation and all of the awesome resources you shared, and the beautiful pictures. Again, here is the survey for the Master Gardeners and the QR code. If you, oh yes, okay. Let me see, that is a great question, everyone. So for those of you who are watching this on your phone, let me go ahead and find this one, Gardening with Natives. Find the link for you so that you can check it out. And thank you all for your patience throughout this as well. Let's see. Also, you should have gotten this link in any of your reminders from Eventbrite about this workshop. Okay, I'm so sorry, everyone. I am not able to find it at this moment. One final place. All right, I found it. Here you go, everyone. Here is the survey. Oop, sorry, that wasn't sent to everyone. There you go, everyone. That's a link to the survey as well. Oh, yes. So it should be sustainablecocoa.org. If you would like to support our efforts, you can go to sustainablecocoa.org/support, but you can also find that information just by going to our website. Yeah, sustainablecocoa.org. If there was a spelling error in that, yes, my apologies. So the way that you correctly spell sustainable and then cocoa.org. All right. Has everyone had a chance to click the link or interact with the link before we close up this program? I just want to make sure everyone is able to click on it and see it. Awesome. Okay. Well, thank you so much, everyone. Thank you for joining us on this lovely Friday, mid-morning, beginning of the afternoon, or noon rather. Again, thank you so much to Anna Wendorf. Wonderful presentation, and have a great day, everyone.